Welcome back to Markets Today. I'm your host, Mbithe Mwema. We are joined by Ms. Stella Wambugu, who is a Senior Equity Trading Associate at Standard Investment Bank. Welcome to the show, Stella.
Thank you for having me, Mbithe.
All right. I know we're going to start discussing what was happening last month, but we must look at Safaricom. They did announce a 6% decline in as far as their earnings are concerned. Last week, the share closed at 31.3. What has the sentiment been like on the trading desk? Because I know you sit on the trading desk. What does that tell you? What has changed, if anything?
Number one, I would believe that investors were expecting the numbers to be fairly lower than last year, given the current COVID situation this year. And towards the beginning of the session, we did see the stock start off at 30 shillings, which is fairly lower compared to the previous session where it closed at 31 on Friday.
Okay.
Volumes are fairly low. I think investors are really unpacking the numbers.
Okay.
I believe come tomorrow we'll start seeing some reasonable volumes. By the time I was leaving the desk, 1.6 million had traded.
That's pretty low.
Yeah,
That's pretty
low for Safaricom, given
Yes.
that it's 60% of market cap.
Yes.
So in any given time, you'd find the average daily traded would be around 2 million at the lower side,
yes.
and 5 million at the
On the higher side.
higher side, just on an average trading day at the NSE.
Okay.
But today we've seen fairly low numbers. But what is interesting enough is that we're seeing some foreign demand. So I don't know whether they were comfortable and expected the numbers to be as they are.
Okay.
I felt that they were a bit lower than I had expected Safaricom to look like.
Yes.
But I believe that if any investor or any viewer is watching, our research desk will give a fairly detailed analysis of the Safaricom.
All right, we will wait for that.
Yeah.
I think what I wanted to just get from your perspective was just the sentiment, and you bring out a very interesting element, Stella, when you say it's 60% of the market. Yeah. So we sort of have 60% of the market capitalization is down 6%. And I know the volumes have been thinning over time. Is there a possibility that this could affect the way volumes look like between now and the end of the year? Or is it too early to call?
I think it's too early to call, but because it's really difficult to know how Safaricom is going to trade, because I believe when you're looking at Kenya as an investment destination, so to speak, you look at the counters that you can easily invest in.
Yes.
And Safaricom stands out from a liquidity standpoint, especially when it comes to foreign investors, and that does matter. So the question would be, what would be their stand? Would they be buying or selling?
Okay.
But definitely volumes, we should start seeing some volumes coming through, especially now that we have some clarity on where the world is going.
Exactly.
with the elections the US elections just being winded up, and knowing that Biden is now the president.
Yes.
So now that is out of the way, and there's some clarity towards what the direction is taking. So investors will now start looking at the riskier destinations, your emerging markets, your frontier markets.
Okay.
Interestingly, I would also say that foreigners have been selling off from both Kenya and other sub-Saharan markets, specifically Nigeria, for instance.
And Nigeria and Kenya tend to sort of be your proxies for investing in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I would say we would see, if the stance is still to sell, then we will see some volume, yes. But we might see Safaricom come off quite a bit, especially now that we got the numbers that we did.
Okay.
It would be interesting to see how it goes.
All right.
Yes.
But no, it's interesting when you say foreign traders, and they typically look at the NSE 6, so to speak. And if you compare at least Safaricom half-year numbers with the rates that we saw from the likes of Equity and KCB, Equity was down, I think, that 23%.
Yes.
Then KCB was down 39%. So down 6% with the possibility of a dividend. You know,
That's quite interesting, Vida. It is quite interesting. This year has been quite something for our market. I would say the first three, and I think I can go into
yes, we can get
quarterly
into that.
the quarterly
Yes, okay.
numbers and unpack October and probably see the direction towards November, December.
Okay.
I'd say we have seen quite some selling off this year, and I mean, it's understandable because for any investor, when there's a present risk, what do? You put your money in safer security. So number one, we'd see there was flight to your fixed income.
Okay.
So in this case,
So flight to
bonds.
safety bonds.
Yeah,
Okay.
your bonds.
And was this, Stella, was this from local investors or foreign investors, or was it a mix of both?
I would say it was a mix of both. We felt it from foreigners because our market is 70% driven foreign trading.
Okay.
So in any one day, if foreigners are not trading in our market, we do feel it, which is quite unfortunate. We're really trying to push for local investors to really put in the weight so that we don't and are not reliant on foreign trading
Yes.
as much. Once they do sell off, we feel it.
Okay.
Right? But interestingly, we see locals have been trying to support the market every so often.
Okay.
And they've been taking advantage of the lower prices, especially when it comes to banks and Safaricom. So Safaricom, we've seen locals profit take because most of them did buy at fairly lower prices.
So anything above 31 was just an opportunity to sort of book some gains.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we did advise as SIB, if you did take a position
Yes.
earlier on in the year,
Yes.
then you did make some good money for you to actually profit take at those
Okay.
levels.
And then you sort of weight it down again.
Yes.
Okay, that's an interesting,
Yeah.
that's a good strategy.
Yes,
That's a
yes,
good strategy.
yes.
Okay, so then now we can start discussing. So Standard Investment Bank normally does a very good report in terms of capturing what is happening in the market. I like the report because it also gives me an overview of what's happening in Nigeria as well. So well done to you and your team.
Thank you.
So this report was the end of October. Maybe you can give us a high level overview of what was happening on the NSE, sentiment, volumes, valuation, and then now we can get into the individual sections of the report.
Okay, from an overview, I would say from a turnover perspective, we did see turnover at $53 million in October, which interestingly is the lowest turnover we have seen since 2012.
That's a very long time, Stella.
That's a very long time.
Wow, that's a very long time.
Which we haven't, and October tends to be a very, end of quarters, tend
Yes.
to be very quiet because locals go into reporting because they have to report to their foreign investors, their trustees because
Yes.
they hold a lot of pension funds. We also have foreigners also trying to sort out the end of quarter sort of books
So it's
and
more
try
about-
and
it's a reporting season, not trading season. Okay.
and trying to rebalance where you need to rebalance. But I'd say that the thing that really stood out this year would be the election. So I don't know whether it was the uncertainty around it. So everyone just pulled back and just let's wait and see. If anything, the foreigners were selling off. And as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't just Kenya. It was Sub-Saharan Africa.
Even Nigeria
and
had
had a sell-off as well. So I think it was more of flight to safer investments. For locals, I believe it was more of they were trying to from that point, that quarter, is there anything that they're going to do towards the last quarter of the year, just to try and see how their portfolios look like.
Okay.
That was pretty much it. I'd say what stood out in terms of price triggers, and I think when we delve into it, would be Jubilee acquisition. So we saw, we did see
that
Jubilee
was the
as
key
a
corporate news actually for
that month.
Yes.
We didn't really find anything else that was maybe positive or negative to change prices as such.
Okay.
So it was just mainly your supply and demand
That was
Yeah.
driving it. Okay, fine.
Driving the prices.
All right, so I think now we can sort of get into the crux of the report, and we can start off
Okay.
with the top gainers. So we had the top gainers. Standard Chartered was up. Standard Group, the media house, was up 35.7. I think our media team will just put up the list of top gainers for us, so that we can be able to engage in this conversation.
Yes.
So maybe you can walk us through the top gainers list. So we did see Standard Group up there. You have also mentioned Jubilee Holdings and East African Cables, East African Portland. Perhaps you can walk us through what was happening in this particular counters. It's the small caps that are dominating, with the exception of Jubilee. What else was happening?
I'd say the main gainers were mainly, as you correctly put it, small cap counters, and these tend to be driven mainly by your retail investors who are speculating. So I wouldn't say, other than Jubilee Holdings, I wouldn't say the rest had anything that really stood out for them to actually go up. It was more so your speculations from retail local investors.
So that speculation is a thing that needs to be unpacked one of these days. But
Yeah.
on Jubilee 269, I for some odd reason thought it would go slightly higher because of the valuations that Alliance had actually put on the table to buy part of its insurance business. Maybe you can walk us through what's happening there. What pushed the price up for that particular period? Do we expect any other price movements, or are we more or less done on that?
I believe the news of the acquisition, merger and acquisition of the two companies was positive news for investors. But then again, let's just delve into the stock itself.
Okay.
It's not your liquid stock. And in as much as it was positive news, when you delve into the volumes that month, I didn't see any move in terms of volumes, because we did have some demand coming through for the stock, just for investors to take a position on it. But then it's a very tightly held stock, so trying to get some sellers
so it was is
quite.
So you literally,
difficult.
if you rallied, you were not able to sort of act on
the news as efficiently
so
as you would say on Safaricom.
Okay, got it.
But yes, as you correctly put it, I believe it's actually a good price to get into.
Okay.
And it's positive for an investor to know that Alliance is actually coming into Jubilee, because we all know how the insurance sector is growing. There's a lot of consolidation coming through, uncertainty around regulation. So Alliance, being one of the biggest financial services groups in the world, and having this expertise on how to navigate through regulation, certain general insurance
advantages.
Advantages. So it's the synergies between the two companies is really positive for the company itself.
Okay, but that sounds a bit medium to longer term, just because you've explained the liquidity, the illiquidity of this particular stock.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Apart from that, was there any stock? Because the rest are all small. Standard Group. What was? I know we started seeing Nation Media coming up. Then Standard Group. Is there a media story?
I did notice a trend myself on the
retail.
It was purely retail speculation. It's just they noticed it was 10 shillings.
Then it started
and it's just going and going and going
Wow.
and going, and it tends to happen a lot with the small cap counters. And it's an interesting trend that I believe maybe we can come. I can come back and try and analyze what is going on, and if there's money to be made in the small cap counters.
Still, when you talk about retail and speculators, anytime I hear speculation, I think of those photos we used to see in our history books of people speculating for gold.
Yes.
And, never getting it. And we also have areas in Kenya to date. People still speculate for gold, but you have to buy the material to speculate. So it could cost you as opposed to benefit you.
Yes, so it's a 50-50 chance.
Yes.
And it's very interesting, because I wouldn't say there's anything fundamental that happens with the small caps, especially on this list here, that would warrant
Okay.
So an investor to say, you know what, I think this is a very good investment to get into.
All right.
Yeah.
I want us to just briefly talk about the top losers list, then we can take a break. Remember, our number is 20146. We'd like to hear your voice. We have discussed Safaricom. We are now discussing what happened in October, and this conversation is supposed to get us to the point of what to expect as we come to the tail end of the year. We'll briefly look at the top losers list, then we'll take a short break, and we'll be back to continue this conversation. Let's take a look at the top losers. Again, small caps. So we have Samia Africa, we have TPS, Serena. East African Breweries was a very interesting one, and Centum, it came down to 150.25. Maybe you can walk us through EABL as well as Centum, because Centum did make the charts in terms of movement in volume and price. It closed at 18.3. We can discuss those two, Stella.
I would say for the two, it was again foreign investor selling.
Yes.
And locals taking advantage of the lower prices.
Okay.
Because we did see it go all the way to a low of your 140 and then came back up again.
Okay.
And then came down again. I'd say locals again, they need to support.
Okay.
Locals were driving the demand, yes, but foreigners outweighed in terms of supply.
Okay.
So it, again, the supply demand dynamics across it. And then EABL is a consumer company, so it gives products, or the products that they do produce are consumed by your mwananchi, so your tasker, so your senator,
yes.
Your spirits, your gilbies. So this particular company is sensitive because, number one, we have COVID, so it has really affected consumer demand across. So your normal family now has to decide, or the heads of the family have to now decide, am I going to buy your senator or am I going to buy unga?
Yes.
Right? So it's one of those companies where most investors are taking a step back and trying to take up positions, and you'd find most of the foreigners that were selling off actually got in at 139, because at some point of the year it was in the early, exactly.
Yes.
So you'll find most of them did get in at 140, so it warrants for them to get out at 150.
Okay.
And it makes sense, because in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty on where things are going, then your short-term plays do work.
All right.
So I think it was one of those, and affected the price negatively.
Okay, and what about Centum? Centum, there's a lot of foreign investor interest there, both on the buy side and on the sell side, and it went to 18.3. And still, the question that we keep hearing, and I know you've had this for so many years, is there a value hang? Because people say, okay, it's cheaper, now let's buy it. Then it gets cheaper the next day, let's buy it some more. It gets cheaper the next day. What was the sentiment on the trading desk, and what should people consider at this point? Should anybody be buying it, or what's the feel in terms of looking at Centum as an investment case?
I would say Centum has been for a very long time one of those companies that once you hear one of the major players buying or exiting the stock,
yes,
you find investors taking the same approach for when it comes to it. And in the recent years, and let me example this year.
Yes.
I would say that there's been local interest and also foreign interest on the company, as you correctly put it, and I have tried to unpack why.
Yes.
Because where there's sudden interest. I know they're trying to raise money. This is a bond that they've announced.
Yes, they have. That's for the Two Rivers
for the
project.
Two Rivers project.
Okay.
But I would say from a high level perspective, and maybe you can unpack it with a research analyst who covers the stock.
Okay.
I'd say it's a sensitive case because they're mainly on real estate, and we all know how real estate is looking like. So it's a long, if you're getting into it, it's a long-term play. And they've also been selling off their legacy assets these past few years. And I haven't really delved into the numbers and how it would impact us. But from a high level, it's a very interesting counter that we're now seeing push volumes that we were not used to.
That's what I was actually getting into, because
Yeah.
those volumes that we did see, in as much as it was coming off, were volumes that we've not really seen in a long while. So has that continued to be the trend up until now, or has that demand-supply dynamic for Centum sort of tapered off?
It's still there.
Yes.
It's still there. Also, I will appreciate that Centum is also a very closely held company. So getting,
so it's also that.
Yeah, so getting your seller buyer sort of situation sorted out tends to be a bit difficult for it. But it's an interesting counter and one to watch out for. Because at those prices, I'd say
and especially
it's looking
very yield.
Yeah, it's looking very, very attractive from an NAV, also an NAV perspective. It's trading at a discount to NAV. So it's one of those interesting counters that I look forward to discussing come next month.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Then before we just go on the break, I did notice there was also a bit of weakness on KCB and equity. They did also make the top 10 losers list. Was there anything happening, or was it just normal sell-off from the foreigners?
Again, yes, it was sell-off. It was a selling off from investors. And again, as I mentioned, locals have been supporting in terms of accumulating.
At the low
prices. October has been a fairly quiet one because they've been doing a lot of reporting. And again, it's just unpacking the macros. And also, what would be interesting is come November, actually this month, most of the banks are announcing their third quarter numbers.
I'm still waiting for the numbers. They're normally very quick to announce.
So
it's already second week of November.
Exactly. So we're looking forward to seeing how it does, how they actually do perform. And then see how November is going to look like.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Stella. So we're still unpacking this report by Standard Investment Bank that looks at the performance in October, and all of this is going to get us to the point of so what for the month of November and also December. We take a short break. When we come back, we continue with this report. We'd like to hear your voice in this matter as well. It's 20146, that's our SMS line. Tell us, where are you watching us from? Are you paying attention to the NSE? Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? See you after the break.